The Nebraska Cornhuskers are entering year 3 of the Matt Rhule era, and it feels like it's do or die time for Matt Rhule and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And you know how I know that? I know that because they fired their offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, in the middle of the year and went over and got Dana Holgorsen. And now Dana Holgorsen's been signed to a 2-year deal. I know that because Matt Rhule, I think, was rightfully so at times critical, whether internally or externally, but I know my sources have told me that, about the defense. He's critical about the defense throughout the year, and I think it's part of the reason Tony White may have left for Florida State. I know that this recruiting class that Nebraska is bringing in is good, and also specifically when it comes to the recruiting, the transfer portal side of the recruiting class, Nebraska would not be bringing in the amount of bodies they are or the high caliber players that they are if they were confident about the direction their program was heading towards in the 2024 preseason. You know, after every season, it's probably more frequent than that, you got to recalibrate. You know, you try something, and then whether you succeed or fail, or it's a partial failure or partial success, you look back, you look to your sides, and you recalibrate, and then you shoot straight. And I think that the approach that Nebraska had entering this year had, in hindsight, some questions and some faults. And therefore, I believe that Matt Rhule is recalibrating a bit. You know, he's bringing in 16 transfers, and I don't think it's the end of it. Last year, they only brought in 9. And one of them, Mac Markway from LSU, came in really late. So really, he only brought in 8 transfers that were going to really contribute. And at the end of the day, you know, Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nair, Dante Dowdle, Stefan Thompson, Micah Mezcua, Sierra Wright, a little bit of Bly Hill. They contributed a little bit, yeah, but Mezcua didn't contribute for the entirety of the year. Stefan Thompson was more of a depth piece than anything. Dante Dowdle's transferred out to Kentucky and was a bit of a limited back in terms of skill set. And Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor, I think, were a little bit disappointing. So now Nebraska is bringing in more bodies. They upgraded their offensive coordinator position, and it's year 3 of Matt Rhule. And Matt Rhule in year 3, whether it's at Temple or whether it's at Baylor, has done a pretty darn good job. So we're going to talk about all of that and more in this segment of College Football with Sam and Nebraska Football. But before we go any further, if you have not already, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video around, hit the notification bell so that you get notified when we go live Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and also when we go live at other points, other times and dates throughout the year, whether I just have additional free time from school or from life and can talk about, you know, more college football, more Nebraska football, and also, well, when there's breaking news, because breaking news happens. You know, maybe someone leaves for the NFL and it's totally unexpected and it's not on one of the days I'm scheduled to go live. Well, if it's enough of a event, we'll talk about it that day. So hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Comment your thoughts down below. If you want to support the work that I do here and donate, the Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or pinned comment. And I highly encourage you, if you haven't already, to check out the Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 on there with over 100 members, and you'll get personal access to me to talk about college football there. So the Cornhuskers, I like their approach entering 2025. I do, because I think it's necessary. I think that you don't want the same timetable that Scott Frost had, where they ended up giving him 5 years and he never went bowling. Now, Nebraska finished 7-6. They got to a bowl game. They won their bowl game, albeit a little bit of a struggle fest in doing so. But as Corn Crazed has mentioned before, this is the last season that Nebraska should celebrate 7 wins. I mean, if Nebraska, even if they go 7-5 next year and technically improve their regular season record, there should be anger directed at the staff. You know, there should be rage, maybe. I feel like 7-5 with next year's schedule and with Raiola being in his second year in an OC upgrade would probably be a little bit of a waste, even a wide receiver upgrade too. And we'll talk about that throughout this video. If they went 8-4, I feel like that would kind of be a little bit like, it's good progress, but we maybe could have seen more. I feel like 9-3, 10-2 for Nebraska next year is the point where you definitely say that year is a success. 8-4, I think, could be a good year, would be Nebraska's best year since in the regular season 2016, and probably would be potentially better than that, because that 2016 Nebraska squad was pretty overrated, and the end of the year definitely showed that. Actually, they went 9-3 that year and lost their bowl games. So it would be, the best season since that, for sure, at 8-4. But all the seasons since 2016, except for this past season, 2024, have had losing records. And this past season had a push. It had a tie, had a non-winning percentage in the regular season. Not a losing season, but not a winning season either in the regular season. Only with a bowl win over a weak Boston College team did that turn into a winning season. So that's just the reality here. But the good news is these 60 incoming transfers are high-impact players in a lot of ways. Elijah Pritchett is transferring from Alabama, 6'6", 327 pounds. He's big, he's tall. He's had some inconsistency, but I think that he could do very well on a Nebraska offensive line that needs an upgrade. Hardly Gilmore, the fourth, is transferring in from Kentucky. Young player. Marquise Groves Killebrew is transferring in from Arizona at corner. Jameer Khan is a corner coming in from Southern Illinois. Marquise Watson Trent, Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year, is transferring in at linebacker, 5'11", 225. I bet you he'll be on my preseason All-Big Ten team. Andrew Marshall's transferring in at corner from Idaho. Justin Rhett is transferring in at safety from Georgia. Dasan McCullough, who did well at Indiana and also well at Oklahoma throughout his years there, he's transferring in at linebacker. And Isaiah Hunter, young player, 6'2", 210, wide receiver from Cal, is transferring into Nebraska. Williams Waneri is coming in from Missouri, 5-star out of high school, 6'7", he's tall, 255 pounds, so he's the ideal build for a D-end. Kevin Gallick is transferring in at long snapper from New Hampshire. Gabe Moore's coming in at D-line from Mississippi State. Jack McAllister, punter, transferring in from Washington. Jalen George is transferring in at D-line from Eastern Tennessee or East Tennessee State. Marcos Davila is transferring in from Purdue. And Dane Key, who I think is the biggest addition in a lot of ways, wide receiver who's transferring in from Kentucky, where Nebraska's new wide receivers coach was coaching in the 2024 season. I look at Nebraska, and I got to think to myself that we've seen Matt Rhule, he likes to tear everything down, kind of cut everything, to prune everything, to trim everything, and then he builds back up from there. In 2023, Nebraska had an opportunity to, at one point, actually entering the month of November, win the Big Ten West, which, yes, was a meme division. It was weak, but they had some moments that year. They scored 18 points per game, allowed 18.2. Their SRS was 60th. In 2024, they scored 23.5 points per game and allowed 19.5. Their SRS was 31st. So there is progression. And if you look at FPI or you look at S&P Plus, it's the same thing. Like, Nebraska was universally better in every way. And by every way, I just mean, in terms of talent, in terms of game-by-game performance, than they were last season. I think there were spots where parts of the defense were worse than last season. I think even parts of the rushing offense might have been better last year than this year. But I think a large part of that was the fact that Heinrich Harburg and Jeff Sims were mobile QBs, and Dylan Raiola is a statue. So unless you have a great offensive line, your rushing game is going to, I think, suffer. And even if you do, your rushing game is going to be a little bit more one-dimensional than if you had a dual-threat QB. But there has been progression. And Matt Rhule, we've seen this before, and I'm going to use the Baylor example because, Power 4 school. In year one, their SRS was 96th. That was 2017. It was 53rd in 2018. They were 20th in SRS in 2019, winning 1 game in 2017, 7 games in 2018, and 11 games in 2019. 3 of their losses were to Oklahoma twice and Georgia once. Georgia was 6th in SRS that year, and Oklahoma that year was the last Lincoln Riley team to go to the college football playoff. They had an SRS of 11th. So they only lost to, top 15 teams in terms of final poll rankings, top 8 teams. So I think that we're seeing the same progression that Rhule teams have showed us before, whether at Temple or at Baylor. We're seeing that here even with the portal, even with NIL, even though the game is vastly different now than it was when Rhule was at Baylor. Vastly different in a lot of ways, but the game overall is still college football. You're still recruiting out of high school. The portal existed in much more limited supply, but again, existed at times in the 2010s. You still have red shirts. You still have roster management. You still have, coordinators. You have assistant coaches, technically the same size, de facto same size, but de jure, maybe I'm mixing up those things. You have a much larger assistant coaching pool because analysts can now coach on field. I think that was a rule that actually benefited college football out of the recent changes. So I believe that Nebraska next year, it's do or die. If they don't linearly progress in the way that they have in the past under Rhule, there needs to be major uncomfortable conversations. But I'd say right now, Nebraska could be a dangerous, and I mean dangerous, football team. So pay attention to the Nebraska Cornhuskers entering 2025. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much, and also share the video around to others who enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do, and comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation, because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brascal Rascal, and Kylo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page, or super chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.